David Levy comes to us from the University of Washington in Seattle, where he's in the School of Information. You probably read his bio, so I won't give too much in the way of details from that, although I learned a variety of interesting things when he talked to my class yesterday. One was, he was one of those vanguard of young, aspiring nerds, you know, my generation, who just couldn't get enough of the dawning new technology, which was a large and cumbersome technology at the time called the computer. And as a high school student already, in Stuyvesant, I think it was, he was already programming in those early days. Right? I can sympathize as a physicist on my PhD, working all the levers and making all the programs running by hand. I mean, those were the good old days. And then he went on to Dartmouth, which at that point was in the vanguard, a remarkable institution, both a liberal arts institution, but also in the vanguard of computers and in particular time-sharing systems and the new languages that were then being written for those systems. And so he was able to go to school there, embrace both the liberal arts education, but also this new emerging technology which has done so much to change and transform our lives. He then found his way to Stanford University, where he studied computer science, artificial intelligence in particular. And as he continued his graduate studies, he told my class how it became increasingly disappointing that this great richness of philosophy, literature, the arts, and so forth, which had been part of his liberal education at Dartmouth, was not being translated into this new and emerging area of artificial intelligence. Intelligence was being defined as something extraordinarily narrow, desiccated, and dry. And he very nearly left by what he called the back door as opposed to the front door. Decided nonetheless to complete his degree, but then at the end of that degree, with a great emphasis in my class, he said, "I'm done with computers forever." I don't want to give away much more of the story except to say that the next 2 years, you would find him in London pursuing a 2-year extensive study in a school specifically designed for calligraphy and bookbinding. Isn't that wonderful? From the immaterial to the material, from the disembodied to the embodied. And that was the beginning of what we might call a turn towards the contemplative. And the rest of his life has really been around this theme of weaving, integrating these two great themes of, you might say, the excellence and power of our intelligence in its disembodied form, but also the great grace and importance of this body which we have and the intelligence which it carries, and the knitting together of these two. He was, of course, wrong about getting away from computers forever. He managed to be lured back to Xerox PARC, which was in those days the premier institution or think tank, you could say, in which all of the things which we now take for granted were kind of brainstormed and invented. The personal computer, if you were to track back a number of sources, but one of the key ones was basically with you and your colleagues there. 15 years later, after 15 years at Xerox PARC, he made his way to the university, and I'll let him tell you the stories from there. David, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Arthur. Could I carry you with me, and could you do my introductions all the time? I couldn't have said any of that better. Thank you. So as you heard from Arthur, this is actually the second time in roughly 24, 25 hours that I'm speaking in this room, and really grown to like this room. Actually, you wouldn't know that it was a place where the faculty had meetings. You know, we really are repopulating it. I am absolutely delighted to be here, and just the fact that I'm able to be with so many of you who are on the same path, so concerned with revivifying, reforming higher education based on the understanding of the contemplative dimension that comes from our own practice, but also comes from our own growing broader understanding. And I too want to thank those who have made this first gathering possible. we all owe a debt to the Center for Contemplative Mind in Society, which has created this organization that is having its first annual meeting. You've heard all the names, but I just want to say again a thank you to Mirabai and to Philip and to Arthur and to Beth and to Carrie and to Sunanda, and no doubt to many other people who have behind the scenes been responsible for making it possible for us to be here on such a beautiful day and what will probably be a really beautiful weekend. After a lot of thinking and not thinking, I finally decided what the title of this talk would be. What you have in your program is, I believe, Cultivating the Contemplative, which was sort of my placeholder title. But I can tell you now that the title is Head, Heart, and Hand. Subtitle, Cultivating the Contemplative in Higher Education. And those first words in the title come from a statement that was written 180 years ago. The one sentence reads, "Men are grown mechanical in head and heart as well as in hand." Men are grown mechanical in head and heart as well as in hand. And these words were spoken by the English historian Thomas Carlyle in 1829, as the Industrial Revolution was taking hold in England. His concern was the new industrial methods, the new machines, the new technologies, and the seemingly new philosophy that was concerned most with product and profit, and the degrading effects that these new ways of working and these new ways of thinking, the degrading effects on human self-understanding and on human ways of looking at and valuing the world. Men, he said again, were becoming mechanical in head and heart as well as in hand 180 years ago. Out of such concerns, later given voice to by, for example, the art critic John Ruskin, and by the socialist craftsman William Morris, and of course by many others, came a movement that proposed an alternative to the dehumanizing effects of industrialization. And this movement was called the Arts and Crafts Movement. It was a movement which argued that local communities of craftspeople should make things like books and furniture and silverware and wallpaper, not by mass production, but through concentrated, heartfelt attention to materials and to the people who would use these craft artifacts and hopefully would sense in the artifacts themselves the craftsmanship, the quality, and the love. These early members of the arts and crafts movement believed, indeed, that head, heart, and hand could be and needed to be better aligned. Now, the reason I start with this little bit of history is because, as Arthur, in a sense, has already suggested to you, the arts and crafts movement has actually been very, very important to me in my own life and my own development over the last 30 years. As Arthur said, I completed my PhD in the late 70s in computer science and felt that something was really lacking for me, that I couldn't completely put my finger on. And yet, sensing something inside of myself that I needed to listen to, I decided to surprise my friends, family, parents, everybody, and pick up and move to London to study calligraphy and bookbinding. And as it turned out, what I began to learn and study there was actually very much what it was that I was sensing was missing. Because I began to learn something about how to integrate my body with my mind, how to work with controlled and concentrated movement, and how to find a place, a cultural and historical place, by recognizing where I was in a kind of historical movement.